Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to completely rethink some of the history we all thought we knew. Because, well, it turns out that when you look past the romanticized, glossy pages of the history books, the reality on the ground, and in the palaces and deep inside the tombs, was a whole lot grittier. And honestly, way more fascinating.
So here is our agenda for this three-part journey. We're starting with the medieval nightmare, then we'll look at Catherine's ruthless rise, and we'll wrap up with the Crimson Mystery.
Section 1. The Medieval Nightmare.
Imagine waking up in the year 1325. Your spine is creaking like an old wooden door, and you're peeling yourself off a bug-infested straw mattress. You know, it's actually wild to contrast the fairy tale we're sold with the visceral reality. Hollywood loves to show us gallant swordsmen, chivalry, and grand candlelit feasts, but let's be real, most of us wouldn't last a single day. The actual Middle Ages, it was a deeply unfair endurance test, defined by communal dirt floors, the constant looming threat of dysentery, and the sheer desperation of just trying to survive the winter. Just think about the absolute volume of daily miseries you'd face. You are waking up in a windowless wooden hut, sharing your open concept dirt floor with livestock. And when nature calls, you're tossing your waste right out the window into open sewer streets. You just give a quick shout of Gardy-Loo and hope nobody is walking underneath. Oh, and if you happen to get a toothache, forget about dentists. You're visiting the local barber surgeon, who's gonna rip that tooth out by candlelight using an unsterilized iron hook.
Yeah, no thanks.
And by the time you sit down to eat, you realize breakfast doesn't exactly energize you, it really just kind of happens to you. You're likely eating pottage. This is a thick, gloopy survival stew made of greens and some mystery ingredients that's been simmering in the exact same pot for days, maybe even weeks. You wash it down with a big gulp of small beer at 6 in the morning. Not for fun, but purely because the local drinking water is absolutely teeming with deadly parasites. Now, if all of that makes you sick, you'll quickly find out that medieval medicine is basically just polite torture with a theology degree. Everything from a minor fever to the plague was blamed on your four humors being out of balance, or, just having sinful thoughts. Got a fever? To them, that meant you had too much blood. The doctor's brilliant solution was to literally drain your life force into a bowl using leeches and unsterilized tools. It was way less about healing and entirely about surviving the cure. Section 2. Catherine's Ruthless Rise. We're leaving the filth of medieval Europe and heading to 18th century Russia, where survival meant completely dismantling the myth of the male conqueror. When you track Catherine's calculated ascent, it is just staggering. In 1744, she arrives in Russia as a powerless 14-year-old foreign bride named Sophie. In 1745, she marries the deeply unpopular immature heir, Peter III. But she doesn't just passively accept this. She spends years quietly learning and observing, until 1762, when she launches a brilliant, bloodless coup. And by 1773, she's fiercely crushing the massive Pugachev rebellion. Think about the sheer scale of that achievement for a second. A foreign-born woman with absolutely zero legitimate claim to the throne weaponized her intellect and charm in a total viper's nest of a court. She brilliantly orchestrated a bloodless coup against her own husband, she outmaneuvered everyone, and took control of the entire Russian Empire without fighting a single battle. And once she had the power, she definitely used it. She expanded the empire by 200,000 square miles. To put that into perspective, that is an unbelievable acquisition of land. Through highly calculated military campaigns and shrewd diplomacy, she secured those long-coveted warm water ports and completely transformed Russia into a true, feared continental powerhouse. What's so fascinating is that she lived, loved, and ruled unapologetically on her own terms. Publicly, she's embracing Enlightenment thinkers like Voltaire. Privately, she's utilizing her famous lovers strategically, totally separating romantic emotion from ruthless governance. And when her power was genuinely threatened by peasant uprisings, she didn't hesitate to crush them, proving she prioritized absolute stability over any philosophical ideals. For Catherine, power wasn't inherited. It had to be crafted, managed, and constantly defended through sheer will. She earned the title The Great, not by being morally flawless, but by mastering the gritty, ruthless mechanics of power in a dangerous world that fully expected female rulers to just sit quietly and be passive. Section 3. The Crimson Mystery. Finally, we're traveling deep into the humid Chiapas jungle of Mexico in 1994
to shatter the myth of the voiceless ancient woman. Deep inside Temple 13 at Palenque, archaeologists opened a pristine, hidden chamber, and what they found was a total enigma: the remains of a woman covered entirely in a brilliant, shocking red dust. They dubbed her the Red Queen. But who exactly was she?
Well, it turns out this wasn't just a standard burial. This was a highly choreographed, incredibly dangerous spiritual transition designed to transform her into a deity. First, she's sealed inside a massive limestone sarcophagus. Then, a delicate jade mosaic mask is fitted right over her face to preserve her identity. And finally, her remains are completely drenched in that sacred, toxic red powder. That red powder? It's cinnabar, basically crushed mercury sulfide. It's a highly toxic substance that the Maya used to symbolize blood, rebirth, and the cosmic bridge to the divine. Bathing her corpse in this volatile poison wasn't just some ceremonial afterthought. It was a profound, bold declaration that this woman was a central pillar in the royal order. She carried immense, undeniable spiritual weight.
For centuries, there's been this colonial assumption that ancient indigenous women were silent and subservient. But the archaeological evidence completely rewrites that narrative. Maya women in power were formidable. They served as high-level diplomats and regents, they maintained dynastic legitimacy, they sponsored towering temples, and they commanded crucial state rituals. They were absolute power brokers in their own right. Which brings us to a really fascinating detail. Her tomb was deliberately constructed right next to Pakal the Great, Palenque's most famous king. By putting her beside the mighty king, the Maya were honoring a cosmic partnership of shared legacy. This represented cosmic duality, masculine and feminine, two halves of a sacred narrative, not buried behind him, but right beside him, exactly like the moon beside the sun.
So, what does this all mean for us? When you reflect on the disease-ridden, back-breaking life of that medieval peasant, the calculating, unapologetic rise of a Russian empress, and the toxic, cosmically significant burial of a Maya queen, it really makes you wonder. Ask yourself, when we strip away the Hollywood myths and the sanitized monuments of history, what harsh, gritty truths of our own era will eventually be polished into fairy tales by the generations that come after us? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning what you think you know.